Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny has released in theaters, and I've got a lot to say about it. So let's talk about it. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your spoiler-filled thoughts on Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. If you want to skip ahead to a specific topic, I'll have chapter markers down below. And let's get started with my thoughts on the movie after watching it a second time. So I ended up watching it 2 nights in a row. I saw it at a press screening, and then I went last night for opening where I did a fan meetup, talked with a bunch of people afterwards. And the reaction to the people that I talked to after the film seemed to match kind of the flavor of the internet, which is people were all over the place. One guy loved it. A lot of people had a lot of fun with it, but they weren't crazy about specific elements. Some people are like, I don't know what I just watched. It's a movie that is very polarizing. It's a movie that people are reacting to in very different ways. And I would say all of that kind of makes sense to me, that it's a film that at its very nature, I think will cause a lot of people to go, I don't know, should we do this? Does it make sense to do this with an 80-year-old actor? Does that work? And then even kind of the story they go with, of what's kind of going on with Indy in his life, you immediately are going to make people not super happy when you do things like that. It can get wild and crazy. And at the same time, it's nice to see Harrison Ford have one final adventure. It's nice to get to do it one more time. I've said it many times before. I like to see characters in different phases of life. And throughout this review, we'll dive into my in-depth thoughts on some of this, but this is the most vulnerable and human Indiana Jones that we've gotten, of what if you are this great adventurer that's done incredible things? That doesn't mean life doesn't happen to you. So it explores that. Should you explore that? Do I want you to remove the mystery of the adventurer? Do I want to see his day-to-day life and tragedies? And do I want him to be just like me, except sometimes he kills Nazis? Well, I kind of want to just see the escapism. So should we do that? I'm not quite sure it's a great idea, but it's a movie where I feel like what I want to talk about it tends to be the negative stuff. But I also still had fun with it. I enjoyed things. I felt things watching that were positive. So even as I did my review, sometimes people will look at like, well, you only talked about the positive for 5 minutes and you talked about the negative for 6 minutes, and then the mixed section seemed a little bit more negative. You talked about the negative way longer. Why did you go positive? Well, because I had more to say about the negative things. Saying it's great to see Harrison Ford in the fedora again, that means a whole lot. Like that carries a lot of weight, but I don't need to explain to you, like, Harrison Ford is good at playing Indiana Jones? What do you mean by that? Or you know what an Indiana Jones adventure action sequence is, and so saying, oh, they're exciting, we actually get to see him during World War II. I don't need to explain that to you. You know what it means, but breaking down the specifics of why elements of the story were questionable, not the best idea, I'll have to elaborate more on it. So it's a movie where I just like have very conflicting feelings about it. My feelings don't necessarily match, I think, the tone of how I've kind of discussed it, and probably that will continue to be true in this video. And I think there's a lot of issues with it. There's things that worked about it. There were things that were interesting about it. There's things that were very safe, while other things that were just wacky and I suppose bold, but just very like, whoa, you went for it. While at the same time being like, all right, we're going pretty conventional with other aspects of it. So there's just a lot to process. And of the people I've watched the movie with, and, I took 2 people to the press screening, and then last night there was, 6, 7, 8 fans that kind of showed up and talked with them afterwards. And one of the things I told everybody is like, this is the kind of movie that I wish that I didn't have to post my reviews immediately, that I could just sit on it like for a month and see where I land when the excitement of new Indiana Jones fades. And because that comes with both the disappointment, the surprises, the like, wow, I get to see him one more time. There's all kinds of different types of emotions that go with it. When you have these franchises with these characters that have meant so much to me for so long, and you get another one after 15 years, there's a lot to process, to soak in. And I don't know where exactly I'm going to land on all of this stuff. And shifts and all those things, but had fun with it. Also had a lot of issues with it. Had a lot of things that struck me as just odd. A lot of them were things I expected I wouldn't resonate, that would be frustrating for me. I think I had a pretty good idea what my feelings were going to be about this movie before I went into it. I just wasn't sure how much fun I was going to have with it, how much I would be irritated by some of those things. But I had a pretty good idea that, the amount of VFX was going to bother me. The action was probably going to underwhelm me, that I was going to love seeing Harrison Ford again and he would be the standout, and that they were probably going to do some stuff with him that would make me go, like, did I need to see Indy like that? I mean, you are doing something new and different with the character. That doesn't mean I wanted to see it. That doesn't mean it was worth telling, and that it benefits the franchise as a whole. So that's the back and forth in my brain that's been going on since watching it Wednesday night. With all that said, let's start walking through with the cold open. So the movie kicks off with Indiana Jones during World War II, and inherently that's cool to see. So Indiana Jones, super famous for killing a lot of Nazis, but he did that before World War II really broke out. And so now we're seeing him as the war hero, battling the Nazis at the tail end of the war, and getting one more little adventure with Indiana Jones still in his prime, fighting Nazis. I mean, that's classic Indiana Jones. That's what this beginning sequence is, with the jokes, the smirks, the stunts, the action, all of it, the barely escaping certain death, the captures, all of it. You get a bit of it in this little mini Indiana Jones movie that kicks off this other adventure, sets the stage for the events of the rest of the film, which is all of that part is awesome and great. But like I said, everything with this movie, it's like, this is so cool. But to do this, we have to de-age Harrison Ford. And the technology is phenomenal, yet still not quite there. Where if you look at the individual frames, it looks incredible, the amount of detail of what they're able to do. And as soon as you see it in motion, it's just not quite right. There's always something just a little bit off about it, especially when you're doing this dramatic of a de-age of over 30 years, and a 30 years in the case of Harrison Ford, you got to just basically turn his face into a cartoon at that point in time. And in the eyes, something's a little bit off. In the mouth, something's just a little bit off. And it always, as soon as it starts moving, as it starts saying things, you can tell. The other one with the de-aging is that they didn't do anything to de-age his voice. So as soon as he starts talking, you see Harrison Ford in his 40s, and you hear Harrison Ford in his 80s. And 80-year-old Harrison Ford has a very distinct, gravel voice that wasn't quite his voice back in the 80s. And so, or the early 90s. So he starts talking, and immediately it doesn't fit the face we're looking at, and the mouth isn't quite right. So, oh man, we're getting another Indiana Jones sequence battling Nazis. So cool. But the cost is that you got that uncanny valley. That's the compromise here, is that we have to have the de-aged face. And, I suppose, in and of itself, that to me, I think would be, say, a cost worth paying. That I repeatedly said it, I like practical stunt work. In and of itself, if they just said, all right, we're going to do practical, but we have to do a little bit of de-aging, we got to do face swapping to make this happen. Okay, I get it. But that's not the only, as soon as you open that door, that we're going all out on 21st century VFX, CGI, you open that box and it kind of takes over. So there's a shot in this intro that I was talking to someone. I noticed it both times I was watching it, and then in a conversation I had today with one of my supporters over on Patreon, we're talking about the movie, and he called out this exact same shot. When Indiana Jones first gets on the train, there's this very wide shot of him running on the top of the train, and it looks unbelievably bad. It's from a distance, and it just looks like this rubber band guy with his arms swinging wrong, and you're watching a movie that costs like over $250 million. This is a wide shot. First off, you can get the CGI right for that. Like, we've seen it a zillion times before. But more importantly, this is a franchise that a previous movie started off on a train. We've seen a movie in this franchise where you have a whole sequence. It's a chase running on top of a train with a kid. Like, River Phoenix, a kid, is on top of a train, and it was thrilling and exciting. And at no point, like, I'm sure they had all sorts of tricks to not actually put River Phoenix in danger. But then you watch this one, and I don't believe a single person was on top of the train. The whole thing was just cartoon, green screen, and everything, and including this one shot of, like, Rubber Band Man running on top of the train from a distance, and it just looks terrible. I mean, at that distance, you can just throw a stuntman on a train. But they didn't film on a train. They didn't have a train for any of this. It was all computers. It was all CGI or whatever. Maybe that, if they did have a train, there's no excuse for like what's going on here. That is just this weird shot of bad CGI on top of it. And I think that was kind of my frustration with so much of the action, that there are things that were like thrilling and exciting, or they should be, except they just went so far in with the VFX that it's never as exciting as it was back in the day when there's a guy being dragged underneath a car. People on real things doing real stuff. There's always cinematic magic, but here, when I'm looking at clearly animated Harrison Ford face, and then the whole movie has these side shots of like people on motorcycles and stuff, and then you see like the background flying by really fast and it closes in on their face. They keeps doing that same shot to show like how in danger they are, but you look at it and you just all like every time you're like, I mean, they're not really on a train, they're not really dangling from a plane, they're not really on a motorcycle, and it's all the same exact kind of like this shot that when you're in a franchise where I never had that same feeling of, I mean, this isn't really going on. When they have these shots of Harrison Ford on a tank in Last Crusade, Harrison Ford is on some real thing and he's hanging on to a deal and smashing into a rock, and you feel the danger because you're looking at this thing happening and it's in a believable world. And here they chose to go VFX, and they chose to do so much of it at such a high level that you're just always feel like you're watching generic modern day blockbuster action. And the thing that made the old movies stand the test of time for me is that they delivered classic, exciting stunt work. And instead of going back to the thing that made these exciting in the first place, they just copied modern day techniques for spectacle. And that's disappointing. And that was before the movie came out, I said, I don't think you can do practical with a man this old. And then even the stuff that they could have done, that they didn't. They just chose to do it with computers and stuff, and it's not as exciting. And we're in a month where Extraction 2 came out 2 weeks ago. There's a train sequence in that where you have Chris Hemsworth doing this one-hour long shot on top of a train with a minigun, and a helicopter lands on it. Like, you can do this stuff. You can do thrilling things with real stunt work, real things taking place. And it's a lot more exciting to me. So, but like I said, as I said at the beginning, I tend to linger on the things that annoyed me about this because I feel like they're fixable. It's still fun and exciting to get Indiana Jones during World War II. I wish that there was a way to do it that didn't require this much VFX. I wish that they did practical stunt work, but we got more classic Indiana Jones. I don't need to elaborate on why that's cool. I don't need to elaborate on getting to see him kill Nazis one more time, getting him to kill them during the war. That's cool. If you're like, why do you want Nazis to die? Like, I don't have to explain that to you. You get it. But the specifics, the minutia, the specific execution of it, that's where I kind of seem to lock in. I'm like, oh, man, I wish that was a bit different. Next thing to talk about here, sad Indiana Jones. So you go into this movie and it cuts from them getting the device, surviving, and they walk off with it. And then we cut to Indiana Jones in his apartment. And it like quickly reveals that like classic image of the grandpa fell asleep watching TV in his chair. Wakes up, he's the cranky old man, mad at the young people listening to their loud music, pours his coffee and then puts some booze in it. He goes to do a lecture, and unlike back in the day where girls are writing I love you on their eyelids and everyone's just enamored with this handsome man, everyone's sleeping and bored, he's going through the motions, just trying to desperately like finish up. This is what's on the exam, but no one cares. Oh yeah, the other big one in here, signs divorce or has divorce papers, and they kick it off, and immediately the idea you're supposed to have is that Indiana Jones is in a really sad place. He's not that guy anymore. He's just a human, and humans get old. Humans have rough spots in life, and Indiana Jones is in the middle of one of those where everything's kind of coming apart. And it's really stands out because no matter what you did or didn't think about, or good or bad about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it ends on such a happy note, which is they finally get married, they have a son, and they're big grins and smiles. And this one picks up, divorced, he's drinking in the morning, no one cares about him. He's this forgotten relic. This is Lucasfilm's favorite little tactic, that your aging heroes, they're best to show them in sad points. The people that we've put up on pedestals, celebrated, let's bring them back down into reality. So they give us this journey where essentially throughout the film we learn that Mutt enlisted in Vietnam, died in the war, and this is what caused the breakup with Marion. And so Indy is at this point in time in his life where he's like, I'm told to teach. They're not interested in me. I can't do the adventures anymore. I've lost my son. I've lost my wife. I'm just sitting here waiting to die with all the glory days, all the good things are in the past. And so that, and as it's kind of learned in the end, he's lost himself. He's not the man that he was. So one of the things about stories, storytelling, what you want to do is find the adventure, the story that our lead character needs to go on for their character arc. So introduce them at a point in time where there's something broken, there's something they want, there's something they desire, and the adventure that they go on either gives them that thing that they want, shows them something better, or, you know, if it's a tragedy, they want something they probably shouldn't have, and there's a cost that will be horrible if they to get the thing that they want, and they decide that they're going to trade everything that is really valuable to gain the thing they think they want, and it ends bad for everyone. But it's the journey they need to go on. So the concept of this film is you have Indiana Jones that thinks everything's in the past. He's lost his son, he's lost his wife, and he thinks, I don't have anything left to offer. And so we take him on this adventure that it's about time travel. It's all about time. Can you go back and fix the mistakes? And through the course of it, shows that he still has more to offer. They give him a new daughter of sorts, or new child of sorts, through his goddaughter brought back into his life. He gets his wife back by the end. And so they do something to give Indy the most overt character arc that he's ever had. And they always kind of given him mini arcs if you pay attention to what's going on. He starts off for fortune and glory. He starts off because he was sent on a mission. By the end of it, he has faith, restored relationship with his father. There's always a little bit of something. This one where it's very overt. He's very broken and in a bad place. And this adventure brings him back. And he gets his wife back because of him. So there's a side to that is well done. There's a side to that where you go, okay, yeah, you found something new and different to do with Indiana Jones. You have an actual arc there that you can make sense And if you're going to do a story about a 70-year-old Indiana Jones played by an 80-year-old Harrison Ford, I mean, that's about as good of a little arc journey as you can have of a man reflecting on his life and thinking, do I got one more adventure in me? But should you? Should you tell that story? Do I want that story? The fantasy, the escapism of Indiana Jones is this handsome, intelligent man of action that has his flaws, but when called into action, he's always in over his head, but he always finds a way to make it out of the mess that he gets himself into. There's always another, getting the girl. I mean, it's the fantasy. It's the person every guy wants to be, that every woman wants. Like, that's the escapism of it. That this dude in his prime, that's exciting, thrilling, funny, adventurous, all of it. It's not that guy 30, 40 years later as the cranky old man knocking on his neighbor's door like, turn it down! It's too early in the morning for this racket. That's not the escapism. The escapism isn't, well, he's just like me. He's suffered terrible loss. And it led to marriage problems. That's not the escapism. So it makes for this very interesting thing in the franchise of, okay, you gave him this very emotional arc. And there's you give Harrison Ford that arc with this character, you get the most heavy lifting acting-wise from Harrison Ford he's ever gotten in this franchise. It's tough to say that it's a better performance than, Last Crusade and Raiders, just classics. But it's a different type of performance because that's so much the adventurer. And there's absolutely moments of emotion there, in particular with his father in Last Crusade. But it's not the same thing as a man just devastated that he lost his son and he lost his wife because of it. That's lost his way. And there's just a sorrow in that he delivers. It's a different type of performance that has much more dramatic, heavy lifting to it. So you get a bunch of these great things. There is something compelling and interesting in it. Do I want that to be Indiana Jones? Do I want him to not get the happy ending? Even just the simple idea of, okay, Mutt wasn't the most popular character. Shia LaBeouf made some ill-advised statements about Steven Spielberg, the movie that he was in. Like, are those good ideas? No, they were not. Do you kill him off screen to give Indy a character arc? Is that the best way to do it? I mean, I get why you did it. I get the arc that you're giving, and it has a lot of emotion to it. I get it. But you killed a character off screen. It's harsh. It's a little brutal there to go in that direction with it. So, I mean, I get what they were doing. It's certainly, the comparisons people will be making and have been making and before the movie came out was to The Last Jedi, Luke Skywalker, where classic Lucasfilm hero of the 80s is brought back by Kathleen Kennedy and Disney to show him to be sad, reclusive, broken, reflecting on the past, having lost everything that he thought he valued. I think this is much less of a leap than like Luke. They needed to build way more to get from where Luke was to where he is. And with Indiana Jones, this is probably a lot of it simply because Indiana Jones is a human, not an alien that looks like a human, not a Jedi, but like a person, just like us. And when the events that shaped the change are things that you can immediately understand, immediately go, right, it's well documented that married couples that lose a child, they have a very high divorce rate because it's just no parent should have to deal with that. So that's so real. And if it's just, you can hear it and you go, oh yeah, that adds up. I get that. And then likewise, the idea that Marion and Indy wouldn't actually just be this happy couple, that everything was nice and smooth. That also feels very believable that they'd have marriage trouble. I don't want that. I want them to have their happy ending, and that's where the movie ends. But that's believable in a way that it's very easy to fill in the gap. So it works. But once again, if we're going to bring him back, why do you bring him back to torture him? and make him sad and make him something he's never been before and take away his happy ending from the previous movie. Take away his son. That's my whole thoughts on this movie. So conflicted. Then we'll talk about Helena, the Phoebe Waller-Bridge character. And I think they really dropped the ball on the writing here, where they decided to introduce her in a way that made her so incredibly off-putting to me that she didn't really win me back until you start getting into the last third of the movie. So this is intentionally her character arc. She's supposed to mirror young Indiana Jones, who was kind of a scoundrel, reputation as a grave robber, doing some definitely shady things, child labor. Like, she's supposed to mirror him in a number of ways, and there's truth to that. And even my good friend Griffin Schiller, Film Speak, who loved this movie, he put out a tweet basically saying, talking about the response to the character and like, hey, we need morally ambiguous characters. This is what Indiana Jones was like at the beginning. I think where they went wrong, and I agree with that, and I think that's why this was almost a really good character, because I think the actress is fun and charming. Here's the problem. The movie introduces Indiana Jones in this very sad place where us as the audience immediately feel bad for him. And we don't like seeing our hero like this. And we know that he's losing so much. And it seems like all the great days are in the past. And in that moment, someone from his past shows up and is excited about the things that he's excited about. And you get a little bit of a spark, and he's happy to see her. And like, what are you learning about? And he has questions and immediately trusts her. Immediately goes and starts like pulling items out that this isn't stuff that he has up on his mantle telling everybody about, because he trusts her. And immediately she breaks that trust. Us as the audience feel bad for Indiana Jones, where he's at in life, and want the best for him. Someone shows up that makes you go, oh, this will bring him back, only for that trust to be violated. Or to put it more succinctly, she takes advantage of an old man's generosity. Takes advantage of a sad old man's generosity and his desire to connect with the past. Desire to be helpful once again. His desire to be useful again. She takes advantage of that. So for me, that immediately, like, I don't like her. I want good things for Indiana Jones, and you violated that. And the way it plays out, she is indirectly responsible for several of Indiana Jones's co-workers being killed, him almost being killed, and then him being framed for murder. And she plays it all as laughs. And continues to play it for laughs when people are out that matter to him die. And he calls her out on it later in the film, and it seems like she snaps her out of it for a little bit to like pause to think about, oh, people just died that he cares about. But for so much of the movie, she does not care that she's taking advantage of a sad old man, that she got people killed. Indirectly, she didn't kill them, but through her little scheme of what she did, it led to people being killed. She didn't care that this man was framed for it, and just has this like jokey vibe around about all of it. Just doesn't care. Indiana Jones was morally ambiguous, but he didn't do that. And I think the other side that just makes it tough to like swallow is that like Elsa in Last Crusade is someone that betrays Indiana Jones. And it's not the first time Indiana Jones has been betrayed by a woman in this franchise. And this is someone that tricks him into going on this adventure and using the diary so she can get it back to the Nazis. She takes advantage of him, tricks him, and lies to him. But at no point in time do you ever think that she doesn't respect him. She thinks he's the real deal. He's brilliant. She's taking advantage of him because she knows this is a guy that can help us. And even once it's revealed that they're on two different sides and they have these back and forth, it's not a lack of respect. It's like she's on the opposite side, but she values him and would like him like join along. Like, you want to come along with us, try and get this thing? Like, I care about this thing. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Helena, is written to be smug towards Indiana Jones. A sad old man. A sad old man that for us, we know is extremely intelligent, has done incredible things. He's like oh, it would be so cool to be him. And that's the fantasy for us. Like, wow, Indiana Jones, so cool. I wish I could be him. And she's talking down to him. So it just makes her character that is unlikable. It's tough to connect with her, tough to care about her when she's taking advantage of the sad old man, getting people killed and doesn't care and is joking about it, and then doesn't respect Indiana Jones, doesn't value Indiana Jones. As a person that bought a ticket for an Indiana Jones movie, me and her are not on the same page. I think Indiana Jones has a lot to offer. I, by default, like him a lot more than you, and you're talking down to him, so I don't like you very much for that. And it's her character arc. So that the concept of it is that through the course of the film, she comes around and finally starts to like connect with him again, respect him. And so you move into the third act and she goes to rescue him and she won't allow him to stay in the past. It's a character arc. Okay, I get it. But you have to do something at the beginning that makes me want to root for her and doesn't just so blatantly violate it. And they didn't do the right to convince me of all of that. There's one of the most famous screenwriting books is called Save the Cat. And it's, it basically is the formula, the template for modern day blockbusters for the last 20 years. So very famous screenwriting book. The title Save the Cat comes from the principle that in the beginning of your movie, you need your character, your lead character or characters to save a cat. So, beginning of the movie, you have this person that's going to be a jerk for the rest of the film save a cat. So we know there's some good in them. We know that they're not totally cruel and heartless. There's something good in there. So as soon as they start doing bad stuff, misbehaving, violating trust or whatever, we give them the benefit of the doubt because we've seen them save a cat. So we can trust them just a little bit. And this does the opposite of that. Helena doesn't save the cat. She takes advantage of the sweet, sad old man that I like. So I don't like that about her. So I don't like her, and I'm not on board until the very end of the film. So I think that was a big misstep. And the thing that makes it even more frustrating is that they had the pieces in there for me to be able to buy into it, which is there's this dialogue in the middle of the film where Indy is like just chastising her, like, do you think your father would be proud of what you've turned into, that this is what you're doing? All you care about is money? And she responds back, if only I'd had someone in my life whose job it was, in the absence of a parent, to give me guidance and a fatherly figure. Oh, like a godfather. Like that's like they put that line in there that you go, if you'd elaborated on that. And I don't need a ton of detail, but they put that in there and she says it like snarky, joking, not as like this thing. It never pauses to be like, Indy, when my dad died, this is what my life turned into. What I know is it like that moment that takes the break between them seriously, that would explain, you didn't care about me. Why would I care about you? There was a way to do it that the movie didn't do. And instead, it just made me not like her until they kind of start to give her the arc towards the end of the film. But they didn't, even as they give her that arc, the payoff of her going on the rescue, there's also the side aspect of it, like, I'm watching an Indiana Jones movie and you sidelined Indiana Jones with a bullet wound so that she can be the adventurer. I don't mind her being a person of action and being important and useful, but you literally have Indiana Jones for the last 20 minutes of the movie taken out of commission while she's the one doing the stuff I want to see Indiana Jones do in an Indiana Jones movie. So, a lot of feelings there. Talk about this real quick, but Antonio Banderas, why is he in this movie? He's in the movie for like 2 minutes. And Antonio Banderas, like, a lot of my audience are kind of younger, but if you're probably watching this review, maybe you're one of the older viewers or anything like that. Like, this guy was like huge for me, like Desperado and then playing Zorro. I mean, this guy's a big deal. And so, wow, we're going to put Antonio Banderas in an Indiana Jones film. This is going to be great. It's like a glorified cameo. Like he's barely in this thing. That was so weird. Like just like such an odd, like casting. If you're going to get like this big leading man of the late 90s, the zeros, that, you know, Oscar nominations. Has he won? Certainly nominations, like all sorts of stuff where you go, Antonio Banderas. Yeah, you know, oh, for this much time. Even when the credits started rolling at the end, I think he was third billed. And then like Boyd Holbrook, who's in the movie the whole time, like he's like number 8. It's like, what is going on here? Why on earth is Antonio Banderas in this movie? Why is he so highly billed? And why is he only in the movie for 20 seconds? Just in general, talk about the middle of this movie. I don't feel the need to like walk through each of the beats. It's an Indiana Jones film. So being like, and then in this chase scene, they jump between, like, I don't have anything interesting to say there. There's not much to elaborate on here. Like, it's all fun enough. It's good enough. James Mangold is good enough that it's enjoyable enough without any of it being distinctly interesting. Like, it's not, I don't think that these action sequences will stand the test of time the way the ones from the original trilogy have, or even some of the stuff from Crystal Skull. I think it's just, it's the type of stuff that's supposed to be here. It's done with competence. We've got a child sidekick that didn't annoy me. He also didn't stand out to me. He was just kind of there. There's a lot of that kind of in the middle of this film. And, you know, all the beats that are supposed to be there, they're a good enough version of it. Solid enough. But I also say the whole movie is just kind of just too long. Everything plays a little bit too long. And the one that really stood out to me, but this is true of most scene sequences in the film, is when they are on the boat with Antonio Banderas right after he gets killed. And Helena starts doing this speech, reading the tablet. And it's like her like going through these riddles and going around the room and gets a stick of dynamite, puts her behind her back and gets a cigarette, hands it to Indy and trying to burn it, all this stuff's going on. And like the sequence goes on just too long, because the idea that she's kind of delaying and she's saying things to tell them where to go, but telling them the wrong place to go just long enough to make the diversion. That's all that needs to be here. You don't need 3 different lines of like, then go to here, then go to here, then go to here. Here's 4 riddles to give us 3 plot things. Then we don't need all of that. You can just do like one where it says where to go, and the second where she's delaying with the match, but it just keeps on going. The whole movie's kind of like that. Even the chase sequences, the thrilling, exciting stuff, felt like they just went 20% too long, 30% too long. It's like, all right, you're not adding anything fresh and new with this next little corner we turn down. And, you know, just sometimes throwing in extra details into sequences that just seemed unnecessary. So when you're trying to make a sequence as exciting as possible, you want to keep like layering conflict. So we're trying to escape from these people who are chasing us. Uh-oh, we have a flat tire. Oh, on our group of people, we're not on the same page. These 2 people want to work together. This one wants to do something different. So we keep trying to get rid of Indy so they can escape. So we're being chased. There's conflict in our group right here. We have a weird, wacky thing that's not the best vehicle for this. All right, so we have several layers of it, of conflict in here. And then there's people shooting at them, but they can't shoot back. More conflict, more layers to it. We're racing to a plane. We're racing to try and grab something. Layering conflict. Then they start adding in also Helena's fiance. So then now we're adding a second faction. We're chasing these people while these people are chasing them, trying to grab them. And it actually makes it confusing because who's shooting at who and why are they shooting at them? And there's so many things going on. And this doesn't go anywhere. Helena's fiance, it doesn't go anywhere. It adds a layer of conflict, but it's almost kind of repetitious because now we have multiple people chasing people all in the same sequence. So it doesn't add interesting new layer to it. It just adds a layer that adds complexity. That's where everything starts to go a little bit too long because there's a little bit too much in there. it's not a big dramatic issue. It's not the sort of thing that crumbles a film, but it's the sort of thing that just makes it feel like the film, how does it get just a little bit too long? Well, because every sequence has a little bit too much in it and needs to be trimmed a little bit, be a little bit tighter. Then I'll kind of skip ahead right into the big finale of the film where after traveling, we find Archimedes' tomb. Inside of it, we find he's got a watch and some other things. So we're trying to figure out, all right, what's going to be the process by which there's some sort of looping around of discovery of future things for him. And then Nazis get a hold of it. We discover they want to go back to 1939. They're like true Nazis. They're not in the Hitler cult. They're not Team Hitler. They're Team Nazi, which is a fascinating version of Nazi, I suppose. So they want to go back in time, take him out. This is a recurring theme from our villain, that you didn't win. Hitler lost. Like, that's the problem here. Hitler did a bad job. He had great ideas, just lost it. That's the problem. We're going to go in there. We're going to be the good Nazis, the true Nazis, and we're going to do this right and win the war. That's their plan. Nazis are the quintessential Indiana Jones villains. If you're going to do time travel, I think there's some things about that kind of make it kind of work. I could linger discussing the CIA involvement. And there's some other kind of details in there that kind of about how our Nazis in this are the guy responsible for making the rockets that went to the moon, and therefore the U.S. government likes him, so they give him CIA agents, try and help him track down Helena. That stuff doesn't really go anywhere. The fact that Indiana Jones is accused of murder and is on the run and a fugitive goes nowhere. There's like a couple of these things that are in there. They're not setting something up for later on. They just add kind of some unnecessary complexity. Once again, expanding our runtime too long. I don't know, the Nazis, they were fine. They didn't do anything that, I thought that the Soviets and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull were distinctly, I just kind of eye-rolling, you got a great actress, but this is not great. Here, it was more just kind of okay, yeah, they're the evil Nazis with a kind of interesting scheme. Normally it's let's help Hitler win the war. This time it's let's kill Hitler so we can win the war for him and be okay, that's kind of interesting, but Mads and Boyd, I like them as actors, so they're just on-screen present. I enjoy. There's not a whole lot here with the characters that make them distinct the way some of the past other villains, I think, just pop. They're a little bit more fun or interesting or whatever, and I didn't quite feel that here. Just a little bit lifeless in the characterization of them. But so they get it. We go on a plane, and we're heading into this eye. Indy starts yelling about continental drift, and we don't know where we're headed. Is this going to take us where we're supposed to go? They're thinking maybe we're going to turn around. They don't. We fly through the portal, and all of a sudden, we're 2,000 years in the past. And this is kind of the big, bold swing of the movie. Where it's whoa, they went for it. And so as they kind of fly and they hey, are we going to land in here? They get too low to the ground and the plane gets damaged by all of the Romans. And so our Nazis are unable to make it back to the portal and go back to where they wanted to go to regroup and rethink things. And I think there's this moment in here where our main villain, Mads, is realizing that, we're going to be stuck here. I got to get out of here. I've gone to the wrong place. And this shot of him just so disappointed that it's the funniest shot to me in a movie ever. Maybe it shouldn't be, or maybe it should be, but it just pauses to have this one shot of him I can't be stuck here. I'm supposed to be the Fuhrer. I'm supposed to win World War II. I'm supposed to be the super Nazi. What happened? And he's so disappointed. I'm pretty sure the internet's probably going to grab that one. I think that's so memeable right there, of just disappointed Nazi. That feels like the future of memes right there. But I love that one shot. But the general idea here, they actually go back in time, and our archaeologist, who's studied the past his entire life, goes to the past and experiences it. All of the Indiana Jones movies have fantastical elements. That's part of this. Whether open the Ark of the Covenant and angels, wrathful angels, kill anyone that looks upon it, from the glory of God or whatever, to guys sticking hands into chests and ripping hearts out, to 1,000-year-old old men, to aliens, there's always something that is far-fetched. So why is it that specifically aliens and time travel just feel a little bit more outrageous? Like, really? That's a bold choice right there. And it's one of the things I talked about last night after the movie. So one of the guys we talked, like, I even proposed that to the group, like, why is it that like time travel aliens feel so far out there? And one of the things the guy brought up was that some of these classical ones, you're talking about Ark of the Covenant, Holy Grail, you're like relying on Christian lore, or I don't even know which religion would fall into, but in Indian religious beliefs and whatever, how they qualify with Temple of Doom, to where that's categorically one thing, beliefs about the supernatural in a religious context, versus aliens and a Nazi being like, well, it's not magic, it's science. It's science. There's time fissures, where it just feels like we're going into sci-fi. They're not the same genre. Both are fantastical in their own ways. They're not our normal everyday lived experience. Fantastical. But if you anchor it in religious beliefs, I think it immediately, for a lot of people, becomes much more digestible. You know, obviously a large percentage of people in the United States come from some version of a Christian faith. And so as soon as you tie in Christian supernatural beliefs, it's not as big. Like, it's like, okay, yeah, if we're going along with this idea of Ark of the Covenant, okay, yeah, we'll play that out. And we'll play out the Holy Grail. Okay, you can connect with it. Even if you don't fall into a Christian faith, you can connect with that in the way that, like, watch Temple of Doom, and we've acknowledged that religious beliefs have a truth to them in this franchise. And so all of a sudden, the voodoo and the drinking the blood of Kali, like, it has powers. We've said that. Now you're also saying there's aliens, there's time travel, and so it's fantastical in a different way. And I think that's part of the problem, that we're not otherwise watching science fiction. We are watching something that from the beginning has said that there's truth to religions. Religious artifacts have supernatural power because our faiths are in something that are based in a reality. Now we're also saying, and there's aliens and time fissures. I think that's where there's a bit of a gap there. That it's not the same leap, and you're asking us to take both of them, or now all three of them now. I think that's part of the problem for why there's a disconnect there. I think I have to sit on it even longer to even know where I fit, because it's like, oh, you're going for it. Okay. In a sense, this isn't any more far-fetched, but it's far-fetched in a different way. Okay. I don't know. And it's interesting and emotional in an interesting way, as you kind of have the segment at the end where Indy is struggling with, well, I've been shot. Why don't I just stay here and die? And there's a side to that like you really think maybe they're going to leave him. Like, oh, they're going to close out Indiana Jones with him dying in the past. There's something interesting about that. And even afterwards with the people I was talking about, one of the girls there, she was like, I don't know, I think I might have liked that if they just ended it there. Like, Indiana Jones has loved the past and he closes out getting to just live it. That's something he really wanted. And I think it's true, but I think the problem with that ending is the arc that they gave him was, wow, my life sucks. I have nothing to go back for. Why don't I just get one final cool thing and die here in the past? That's depressing. It makes Indiana Jones death incredibly depressing. Well, my son died. My wife left me. I don't have my career anymore. I can't do these adventures anymore. well, only thing left I can do is this one crazy thing and stay in the past and die a pretty unpleasant death over the next week or so, or next few days, or however long it would be. That's all I got. It was really depressing and not very satisfying. There is, like, giving that final, like, bookend for Indiana Jones that he got to see the past. I think there's an emotional release to that. And that Harrison Ford, as this now incredibly seasoned actor, sitting there and just seeing the tears of joy pour down his face that he got to experience this in his life. The thing that he values so much, he got to see it and experience it. There's something very satisfying in that. That almost tricks you into thinking, oh, this could almost be its weird version of a happy ending. Bittersweet, but happy ending. But in the context of the full arc, not like, you can't leave him there to die with like that depressing of a reason. There's no reason to go back. I'm just going to die here and watch the history as I become part of it. So then Helena won't let him do this, punches him and takes him back for our final bit. So seen this movie twice. At the press screening, when she punched him like that, there was this one guy, like, there's chuckles in both screenings I saw. There's this one guy in the front that wouldn't stop laughing. It was like he thought that was the funniest thing he'd ever seen in a movie ever. Just like punches him in this, like he laughed and the whole room's laughing, haha, dies down. And then he kept going, pauses, and then he kept going again. And then the room realized that the guy wouldn't stop laughing. So we started laughing a little bit with him, which got him laughing again, which is a funny moment. So I think there's, you know, even the nature of, you want characters to make choices, make the right choices that are, they're the person that their choices move them forward. And it's their choices that move them backward. They are the one with volition determining their character arc or how they react to the things in front of them. So I think there is reason to be a little bit of like, wait a minute, the ultimate final choice in the Indiana Jones franchise is someone else chose for him to go back. And then likewise, someone else made an effort to resolve his marriage issues. I think that's the piece that I think is the most questionable. Like, I don't think I have, like, at the moment, I don't inherently feel like, oh, I didn't dislike that. Kind of worked in the context. And if you think in the context, like, she has her own character arc here. Her character arc is at the beginning, she just sees Indiana Jones as a mark. And by the end of it, like, it's her godfather again that she can't let die. She must go rescue him. And I need to make it right. Like, I treated him like terribly. He's broken. He's sad. Now I need to make this right. So she pulls him back. She sees what he can't see. And then she brings Marion back into his life. I think there's a lot in that that's actually pretty good and profound. I might be okay with that. At the same time, Indy's not the one that chose, like, isn't the one that realized, I do have something to live for. I need to make things right with my wife. I know who I am now. I know what I need to live for, and it's my wife. And that's kind of the problem you run into when you have two main character arcs and leads in your story. Sometimes they conflict of who needs to make certain choices. So anyway, we get our final little scene in there where it's revealed Marion shows up, and so much of the problem was Indiana Jones disappeared when Mutt died, that he just became a different person. And in a way that you understand it. Like, it's not like of course that's what would happen. And through this adventure, it's brought him back. The story the journey our character goes on throughout the movie needs to be the adventure the character needs to experience to be who they're supposed to be. This adventure brought Indiana Jones back, so we get our happy ending with Marion once again. Solace shows up once again. There's glorified cameo. I'd be fine with that if they hadn't put him all over the trailers. Like, they marketed the movie using almost all the footage of him that's in this film. It's in the trailers, which is weird. So a movie pretty quickly actually ends if you think about it. I'm pretty sure there's pretty significant reshoots here. I suspect they were going to originally leave Indy in the past and then realize that's a depressing ending, and they kept rethinking and reworking it, how to do it in a way that was most satisfying. So she punches him, and we have this pretty quick little scene, but at the same time wraps up the major character arcs, leaves out the stuff about the police and the CIA. We forgot about those. But, then people run off, and we zoom in on the hat, and Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford, say goodbye one final time. So as I said all along, it's a movie where I have all these conflicting feelings, because I get what they were doing. Some of it's kind of interesting. It's different. It is an exploration that we haven't had before, but is it an exploration that I think actually is what I want? And I think this is the discussion that we've been having since Crystal Skull, where we brought back Indiana Jones after almost 20 years at that time, where he'd had a perfect send-off, where he literally rides off into the sunset. Brought him back for one more adventure, was like, it's not quite the same, but we got a new happy ending. Okay. But this new happy ending isn't something we actually needed. And then likewise with this film, we make him really sad, and then we give him a new happy ending. He's back with Marion, though still with a dead son. So happy-ish ending. But it's not more satisfying or just leaving it with him in his prime, riding off into the sunset. That doesn't make it bad. It doesn't mean there's not fun and emotion to be felt and great performances and sequences that are cool to see. Doesn't mean that those are gone. At the same time, did we need it? Does it actually enhance the legacy, the reputation of the franchise? And I don't know that it does. I don't know that I needed Indiana Jones to have lost a child. That's a new look on the character, but I just don't know if that's what I needed. I don't know that I needed an adventure of him so far past his prime where the fantasy's gone. And we have to get a different guy to ride the horse because an old man doing that would get seriously injured. And we have to de-age this. We have to do this CGI. And all of a sudden we kind of lose so many of the things that made this special. And it just kind of feels a little bit more like generic, like a modern day blockbuster. So there's things that I dug, and a lot of things that I was not as crazy about. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it. Let me know your thoughts down below. You can check out my reviews of the other Indiana Jones movies right over there. I got that video right down there where I talked about how I would fix Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.